Hi, my name is Koen Van Hulle, and this is securing FileMaker Server in the cloud. I'm born in Bruges, a lovely town in Belgium. Today you can find me in Ghent, another lovely town in Belgium. I'm FileMaker certified developer and work for Lesterius. Within Lesterius I'm responsible for FM connection or hosting division. You can find me back in the FileMaker community as an MVP. Welcome in this session about FileMaker Server in the cloud. As an old-time in-house developer, or if you're new in the Claris platform, you will probably recognize in the story of Emma and Eric. In this session, we will follow the fictional company Clip Factory, who invented Clippy, the first internet-connected paperclip. This is Emma. Emma is the contract manager. She's very excited about the Claris platform and works closely together with Eric. This is Eric. Eric is the problem solver of the company, and together with Emma, he designed an app to manage the closed deals and contracts. The app needed to work for FileMaker Pro, Go, WebDirect, and has a link with Claris Connect, signing with DocuSign. And Eric is proud to present his first application to his boss. But that turned out a little bit differently than he had expected. His boss found it a great solution and asked if he could use it at home or at the customer's office, and asked him to be the new host master for this solution. But Eric forgot completely the deployment aspect of his solution. So Eric starts studying. How do I start? How do I set up a FileMaker server? He needs to answer a couple of questions. One of these questions is, where do I host my solution? Will I host it myself? Will I search for a data center? Can Claris help me out? Which data center is okay? Which partner is okay? These are all questions Eric needs to answer before he can host his solution. The second question that pops up is, can I do it secure? What about security? How do I know that my solution is hosted securely? What about compliances, such as GDPR or other compliances? During the studies on security, Eric discovered some bad figures. He discovered that the number of vulnerabilities per year are growing exponentially. And not only the number of vulnerabilities, but also the number of data breaches in the US alone growing every year exponentially. 43% of the cyber attacks target small businesses. So security breaches and security issues are not issues of big companies alone, but also the smaller companies. And not only the cloud is a part of the problem, but 92% of companies fail in pen testing on an internal LAN network. By looking to this, they pinpointed 4 categories of causes. First of all, configuration flows, mostly due to lack of internal knowledge. Failure to install security updates, also due to lack of knowledge. Vulnerabilities in web application code that is hosted internally and never get updates. And a weak password policy. So the more Eric is looking into the security aspect of his deployment, the more he gets worried. And he starts saying, oh no, what have I done? Can I take this responsibility? How do I start? And for God's sake. I think for a lot of in-house developers or people who start with the Claris platform, this sounds very familiar. So let's try to find an answer on Eric's questions in the next chapters. In this chapter, we are going to figure out where Eric and Emma can host their custom solution. And we also figure out why the answer to the question where is so important from a security point of view. Before we can answer this question, we should talk about the CIA triad. This is a security model that has been developed to help people think about the various parts of security. CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And when you look to a security problem, you always have to check it to these three topics. Let's have a look first to confidentiality, which are examples of moments where confidentiality is broken within the aspect of the hosting of a solution. So an example could be an employee putting sensitive data on a removable media, such as SD cards. He can take a backup, make a copy of the backup, and put that backup on an external drive. Or an employee takes home the backup drive without having the authority to do. And he could not know. A host master could have full access to the database of the customer, which is not clearly the goal. He is not allowed to have access to that database or to that solution. Maybe it contains sensitive data. A host master manages the list that you see often in a corporate environment, where a host master is managing the list of passwords of all users, and they even have it somewhere in their pocket, the list of usernames and passwords. These are in fact breaches of confidentiality. So the questions we have to raise if we look to a hosting solution is who has in fact physical access to the server and to the infrastructure? Who has access to the server and the infrastructure? Who has physical access to the backups, or who has access to the backups? Who can just take the hard disk or the disk tapes, and is these people allowed to take that access? If it's just the disk put every day somewhere on the desk, and everyone can take it, that's a breach in security. So we have to look into these aspects to decide if we can host our solution there or not. And so what are the other policies and measurements that are taken to ensure confidentiality, such as password measurements? The next aspect is integrity. So are we sure that the data or data we see is the data that we should see, is in fact the main answer. And to assure this integrity, we need to be sure that no one else or no one has changed the data, or that the data is changed due to an incident. Imagine that the server is crashing in the middle of a process. It could be that your data is corrupted. So in this case, your integrity is not okay. It could be that no SSL certificate is installed on your server, and that the transport between the client and the server has been changed by someone in the middle. Could happen with a website or with another environment. So the questions from an where aspect is what is in fact the backup policy of the place where we're hosting? If I do it myself, where are the backups? Are there taken backups? Can I go back to my backup if an incident happens and my data is corrupt? Is my data and transport encrypted? Is encryption at rest used? Is it necessary to do it in this environment or not? Yeah. A third question, or a third aspect, is the availability, which is the most common one if you think on infrastructure and hosting. So examples of breaching is an employee just switches off the server before going home, yeah? And none of his colleagues can have access to the data or to the solution. An unexpected power cut can happen, or a network cut can happen. Someone removes the server. Oh, what is that machine doing here? And he takes it offline or takes it home. Or the server is stolen and the data is stolen. And in the shared hosting, as an example, it could be that another solution takes so many resources that your solution becomes unavailable for your users. So we have to look into these aspects to answer the best place for my hosting. So the questions we can raise is who has in fact physical access to the infrastructure? Is it arranged? Can everyone just go into the server room and switch off the power cut? Is there a power failover system? Yeah? And what are the assurance there? How long? Is it just to close down the server, or is it can it keep up the server for many hours? What is the backup policy? Is it is it along the FileMaker backups, or are there also external backups? Are they only on the same place, or are they also externally hosted? And do you have my own server, or is it shared with other clients and users? So before we can answer the best place for the where, these aspects we should take in account. So the first place where we can host is in-house, in your local network, or your or even share it over the WAN for your users. So the big advantage of this solution is that you have completely full control over the environment. So you choose the hardware, you choose the complete policies linked to it. You install the software and all the components, and you can manage it like you want. Another advantage is for the local users. You have low latency. That means that the network connection is fast between the clients and the server. The cons: you have to buy own hardware, proper hardware. You need, in fact, if you do it properly, an expensive network, and all the expertise to secure your entire infrastructure, including the physical access. So you don't want that someone goes just in your server room and plugs out the server and take it to home, for instance. You have to do all the maintenance yourself. What we have seen is that working from home is the new normal these days. So you have a lot of extra challenges to give your users quality access to your home server, or your own hosted server solution. The second option for Erik is having to look to a data center. A data center is shared over the internet. So the biggest advantage is that you, in most cases, not have to invest in your own hardware. That the complete infrastructure and hardware is managed by the data center, that they do some monitoring for you. Imagine the server is down, or the network is down. They see it immediately and they fix it. Most of the time, no one expects the people of the data center have physical access to the server, so you cannot just jump in and ask to see your server, for instance. And you still have full control over the installation, maintenance, and setup of your FileMaker server. The biggest disadvantage is that the data center has a limited responsibility. They are not responsible for your FileMaker server software, if your FileMaker server is installed properly or not, if your FileMaker solution is installed or not. You still have to manage everything. Not the hardware and not these components, but most of the time the operating system and the FileMaker server and the updates of Java and so on. Most data centers don't have knowledge of the FileMaker platform, and there are so many data centers, so the choice which one you have to choose is very difficult. To help a little bit with the last question, there are some main things you can look to it. First of all, the physical place of your data center. If all your users are in the east coast of the US, it's not a good idea to host your FileMaker solution on the west coast of the US, or in Europe, or in Asia. So nearby is better most of the time, because the farther away the solution, the slower the network latency will be. Second, if your data center is on a backbone, which is like the big bandwidth cables of the internet, you will have a better reachability than if it's somewhere in the desert, if it's a data center somewhere in the desert with a poor line link to it. So these are two main aspects. If you look to AWS, they have a lot of data centers in there, in the US, worldwide. So that's a good one to choose to choose one that is nearby. Second aspect is all about trust and about policies. So if you choose a data center, you have to look to the policies, if the policy is matching with your policies in the company. So what are the policies concerning the physical access to the machines? Can people from externally just make an appointment and see your server or not? Is it only staff that can access it? What kind of guarantees do they give on safety and security? What is the responsibility model for the hosting? Are they responsible for the infrastructure? Are there insurances for that infrastructure or not? Is there a certain SLA there? What kind of data center is it? Is it a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 or 4 data center? And or doesn't have any tiers? Tiers stands for, in this case, for power outages. What do they promise in case of a power outage? So, and there are several levels to it. And so, do the levels match with your expectations and with the expectations of the company you're working for? Do the data center have their own certifications? Are they ISO certified? And an important one to have a look to is the 27001 certification, which is especially for data centers and for the security aspects of it. Is my data center PCI DSS certified? So can it store credit card information or not? If they are not PCI DSS certified and your solution requires this, then you cannot host your solution there. The same if you're in the medical sector. Certain medical countries in the medical sector require certain certifications of a data center. If they don't match, then you are not allowed to host your medical solution there. Also have a look to the aspects of other compliances like GDPR. If you are in Europe, it could be that you cannot do your hosting in Asia or in the US, depending on your situation and the data you have. So these are important aspects if you choose a data center. But a lot of them goes to trust as well. Do I trust my data center or not? Do they take care of my solution and my hosting and my questions or not? The third option is having a look to a Claris hosting partner. There are a couple of them in the market. So you have the same advantages as in a data center, but they have the FileMaker expertise and skills. And depending on the hosting partner, they have different options. It could be that they do a complete managed hosting. That means that they take care of everything concerning your FileMaker server. So they manage the setup, they manage the installation, they manage the security, they manage the operating system. And the only thing you have to do is put your FileMaker files on this place and start using your application. In a co-managed situation, you will manage the server together with the partner. So you have another kind of responsibility. That could also be a disadvantage managed by the partner, because that means that you don't have full control over the environment. And maybe for your solution, you want to have full control over the environment. You want to install third-party software. You want to manage everything, and that could be a disadvantage as well in this model. As with a data center, there is a shared responsibility model. You are responsible in most cases for the solution, while they are responsible, in fact, for more for the infrastructure and the service they deliver. This kind of hosting comes most of the time on a higher cost compared to if you do it in a data center alone. If you have chosen or have to choose for a Claris partner, be aware. There are some red alerts. Shared hosting is no longer, if you're not an SBA, hosting an SBA solution, is no longer allowed. So you can only do shared hosting with old FileMaker versions. And old and unsupported FileMaker server versions, you should not use them anymore, especially not in the cloud, because they could contain some vulnerabilities that will not be patched and updated by Claris anymore. If you want to find a list of Claris hosting partners, you can find them on the Claris website under Find a Partner, and then you choose the option Hosting. And so every country you will find a couple of partners. And the last option, and might be the best option, is having a look to FileMaker Cloud. So what is FileMaker Cloud? FileMaker Cloud is a SaaS solution from Claris. So the pros of this solution is it's installed and set up by Claris, so you are sure that this is done by the best. Easy management and onboarding, so everything is in one place. So you onboard your users and to your server and to your licenses on one single place. You don't have to provide separate links for downloading a FileMaker Pro or whatever. For the security model, you're not make use of users within the FileMaker solution, but they can make use of their own Claris ID identity or any other open identity providers such as Okta. It's compliant with a lot of data regulations such as GDPR. There's an enhanced security model behind it. I'll be coming back on this one in one of the next chapters. They assure end-to-end encryption, and you don't need to install your own SSL certificate. There's 24/7 support, and you get the newest technology first on FileMaker Cloud. There are some cons as well. Some technology is not available, like if you have a solution that makes use of XML publishing or some PHP combined with XML publishing, or you have some plugins that are not compatible, that are not supported in FileMaker Cloud, or you make use of ODBC extensively. So these are technologies that are currently not available in the FileMaker Cloud platform. It could be that there is no data center nearby your user base. So it could be if you have a solution, if you are having a company in South America, that you don't have a data center nearby, so that the latency is a little bit too high to use the FileMaker Cloud platform on a day-to-day basis. Using Claris ID or an open ID provider could also be a disadvantage, because maybe your solution was completely not made to work with this kind of identity providers. And the second and the last one, and that is a disadvantage as well, is per server you need additional licenses. So if you are in a company where you're working with a development environment, a separate staging environment, and a production environment, and you want to have these three environments separated in FileMaker Cloud, then you need 3 times the license for this kind of environments. Depends a little bit on the policy you have inside your company. There was a last option, FileMaker Cloud for AWS. I mentioned it shortly. Well, this is the previous product before we had FileMaker Cloud, and has an end of life. So it's not a good idea to have a look into that product to set up new hosting solutions. So it will be no longer available for sales in January 2021, and support will end on the 1st of January 2022. So this is no longer an option for your to host the FileMaker solution in the cloud. So let's recap. There are 4 possible hosting solutions. You can do it in-house. You can do it in a data center. You can do it with the Claris hosting partner, or go for FileMaker Cloud. And depending your situation, the first one could be the best. It could be the best to go to a data center and do all your own setup over there. you can choose for FileMaker Cloud, which is logic for someone who starts with the platform. Or if you have a tight collaboration with your Claris partner, you can also host over there. When Erik wanted to buy a new Claris FileMaker license on the Claris website, he had the choice between the on-premise FileMaker Server and FileMaker Cloud. Let's see what's the difference between the two. First, we're going to look to the FileMaker Server, the on-premise option. This is a piece of software, a license in fact, that you can deploy on Windows, macOS and Linux. FileMaker Server is part of a license model that can be rented annually or sold perpetual. The customer has some responsibilities for the infrastructure, for the hardware, for the maintenance, for the security of the platform where he will host it. And there is a limited support. The support limits to the software themselves. FileMaker Cloud, on the other hand, is a service, a software as a service. So it includes everything. It includes all the infrastructure. There's no installation required. Service means also support, and there is a huge support level on that service. You have a subscription model. Today you can choose between an essential plan and a standard plan. There is some shared responsibility, so Claris is responsible for everything that has to do with the infrastructure, hardware and maintenance, also for the security of the platform. The customer, of course, is responsible for securing his solution. And Claris offers a 24/7 support. Let's have a look to the on-premise FileMaker Server from the aspect of security. How is the network setup? So you have some clients like FileMaker Pro, FileMaker Go, the browser. It could be a website as well, or curl. And to make a connection to the FileMaker server, it makes a direct connection to that server. In best cases, we have foreseen ourselves a firewall or a security software to prevent for attacks in front of it. If we have to connect to a second server or to a third server, we have to connect directly to that server again or to that environment again. This is how the network setup is for a FileMaker on-premise server setup. Let's have a look to FileMaker Cloud. In FileMaker Cloud, you also have several FileMaker server instances somewhere. But they are in the FileMaker Cloud environment. And to make a connection, you don't make a connection directly to these FileMaker servers. No, you make a connection to the FileMaker Cloud environment, which is protected by firewalls and security software. Standard firewalls and security software. But on top of this, Claris has also an own infrastructure on front of it. A complete security infrastructure containing additional software to protect against attacks, network protection, firewall. There is their own Claris ID for authorization. They have a complete security subsystem. They have load balancers in there. So you don't connect directly to your FileMaker server. You pass, in fact, the FileMaker Cloud infrastructure layer and go directly to, and then connect to the FileMaker server. So that FileMaker is sure that the connection you're making is coming from you and not from an intruder. To be able to do that, FileMaker has to deliver security and support, and they do that with 3 dedicated teams. A team that is responsible for the security, end-to-end encryption and security software. Then you have the DevOps, who are responsible for the deployments, the monitoring, looking to the infrastructure and the availability. And then you have the CloudOps that look into the uptime, doing the auto updates, the maintenance and the performance tasks. Erik has chosen to deploy his solution in a data center, and he's now preparing the installation of the FileMaker server. What does Erik need? Erik needs a server with an operating system, FileMaker Server installation software and license certificate, a registered domain name, a DNS server, and an FQDN, which is the full qualified domain name, such as filemaker.clipfactory.com. He will need an SSL certificate linked to that domain name and a secured FileMaker solution. In a data center, you can most often choose between three options. A colocation, that is when you bring your own hardware in a data center. You can go for a dedicated server, which is a physical server directly attached to your account and not shared with other companies. Or a VPS, a virtual private server, which is in fact a virtualized Windows environment. Today, the most logic choice is to go for the last one. Why? It's easy to expand it later. So you can, in a lot of data centers, easily expand the amount of memory, the CPU, the disk space you need. You have the possibility to take snapshots before and after an installation and in between. There are all kinds of failover systems in case of hardware issues, so that one disk is taking over from another disk, one network card is taking over from another network card, and so on. The operating system license is often included in these packages, and they all have, in the current generation, fast SSD disks. Check also the minimum requirements of the FileMaker server on the Claris website. So Erik has prepared everything and is ready to do his installation of the FileMaker server. Emma and Erik bought a VPS in a data center. Now they are ready to install and configure the FileMaker server and the operating system. One of the first steps they do is set up the firewall. They open the ports for FileMaker server. These are 5003, 80, 440 and 16000. If they would need XDBC, they would also open port 2399. In case you have a multi-machine setup, be sure that port 16002 is reachable between the master and the worker machines. And these ports need to be opened on both machines. Close any unused ports and services if possible. Of course, they have to manage the operating system and will use remote desktop for this. Never use remote desktop directly. Use it over a VPN or SSH gateway, or use the KVM of the data center. If you have an SSL certificate, install it and use it for RDP. So port 3389 should be closed from outside. Alternatives are not safer. VNC is even worse to manage the server in the cloud. And TeamViewer is a good alternative, but the biggest problem is that you might forget to update it and bring it up to date, and the software is there to be exploited. Just as an example, on the dark web, you can already, for 10 euros, have access to, via RDP, to a major system in an international airport. So hacking this and RDP sessions are very cheap. Second, you want to share your files, your FileMaker files with the server and some configuration files. Don't use SMB for file sharing. Don't use plain FTP for file sharing. It's not encrypted, it's not secure. Use the alternatives SFTP or FTP over TLS instead. Also avoid peer-to-peer connections, such as torrents. You would not believe that this is used on FileMaker servers, but we have seen it in the wild at customers. During the installation process, you don't have to install Bonjour. Bonjour is a technology to broadcast the IP address of the FileMaker server. In a hosting environment, this is unneeded and not be used. During the installation, you get the choice to choose a username and a password, and also a PIN code. If you use that username, don't use the standard admin one. That's an easy one to guess. Use also a strong password. The longer, the better. Yeah? The recovery PIN, you should write it down and never forget it, because this is lets you able to recover in case you lost your password on the FileMaker server. This recovery PIN can only be used on the local machine. If you are with multiple administrators, try not to share the passwords of the root server or the root user. Make use of the subadmins or multiple admin console accounts. You can enable this by going into the console of the FileMaker server, going to external authentication, choose a name of an external group, in this case a FileMaker group admin, and add your users and your domain or in your local machine to that list and enable it. So make sure that you not share passwords with multiple users. Second setup in the console is enabling filtering. By enabling this filter, users have first to log in into the FileMaker server before they can see the files they have access to. This is a good idea if your FileMaker server is put on the cloud, because any hacker or any one from outside cannot guess your FileMaker file names up front. They have to be logged in first. What are the other options we have to install on security level on the FileMaker server? Is an SSL certificate. This is probably the most difficult part of the installation process in FileMaker. We see a lot of support tickets and questions about this on the community website popping up, because there is a lot of misunderstanding about SSL certificates, how to buy it, what you exactly need, what is supported, and so on. More information you can find in my other session about SSL certificates and FileMaker server. Very important, as stated by Claris, the certificate that is installed with your FileMaker server by default is only for testing purposes, not for production. Even in an internal network, and remember what we have said before about the number of breaches in smaller companies and in local networks, even in in-house environments, you should have a proper SSL certificate installed. Erik and Emma are now ready with the installation of the FileMaker server. They can start deploying their solution and working on it. What did Emma and Erik remember of this session? First of all, an SSL certificate is mandatory, also in a local network. Choose the most recent FileMaker version and operating system. Don't work on old versions from years ago. Don't forget to secure your FileMaker solution. And where you host is part of your security plan. So think very well where you host your solution. Will you do it yourself and manage completely everything in-house? Will it be in a data center? Or do you hire a Claris hosting partner? Maybe FileMaker Cloud is the best solution for you.